Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you. Thanks for joining in this morning, afternoon, evening, whatever it is for you respectively. But I'm really looking forward to today. As always, I always enjoy getting together and chatting and working through what does it take to get certified, especially on this Magento platform. To be frank, I think a lot of what we're talking about is applicable to even other certifications, but today is going to be especially applicable to Magento because we're going to focus a little bit less on study techniques and cover something that is discussed in, I think, pretty much every one of the tests, and from what I've seen is pretty much the lowest marks that people get on average for this conversation. And as you already saw, that it will be store scopes. So we're going to dive in and we're going to learn about store scopes, or at least maybe if you already feel like you have a good handle on it, we're going to review them. One thing I wanted to call out, though, is for those of us, I'm going to say in the United States, probably India, I guess those are, and not to a lesser extent South America, store scopes are something we don't necessarily deal with as often, or in the same scope, the same context as what is discussed in the tests. And so those of you in Europe probably have a much better handle on this, simply because, well, you'll see that they are much more commonly used in Europe. But this is one of the most powerful features of Magento that still, even after, I don't know, what was Magento released? Magento 1 was released, I think, in 2007, 2008, somewhere in there. And here, 13, 14 years later, BigCommerce, Shopify, all the other competitors have barely caught up. So it's a really great feature of Magento, and I'm looking forward to talking about that a little bit more. But before we begin, we need to discuss, do our welcomes and everything like that. So I'd love to see, just drop in the comments where you're from. You guys have already started that, so we'll just continue on with a good tradition there. I'm actually from Kansas City, so if, I should put this up on the slide sometime. Right in the center of the United States, there is a state called Kansas, and we live in Kansas City, which ironically, Kansas City is more on the Missouri side than the Kansas side. But whoever was naming cities, I guess they didn't really take into account states. Yep. All right. Oh, John finally passed the Magento front-end expert certification. Great. Well, if you'll give me 1 second, I always like to do shout-outs, and I need to make sure your name is in there. That's great. Let's see here. That is excellent. And remember, if any one of you passes the test, please go drop that in our Slack channel. I have a window or a pinned whatever you call it, message, I guess, Slack message. And so go drop your scores there. That's really, really important. 1 second. Oh, and it looks like I made a bit of a mistake in my configuration of this morning, in that I set the stream latency to be normal latency. So please just ask questions, and unfortunately, I'm going to see the answer. I'm going to see your question come in later than I normally like it to be. So, oh yes, Rotario said he passed about 32 minutes ago. That is awesome. That is a way to kick off a Saturday morning. Actually, you said you're from Sweden, so that'd be a Saturday afternoon. What a way to kick that off! Passing the professional developer test. So I am thrilled for you. I'm thrilled for everyone else of you who have also passed. I show about 5 people here who have passed in the last 2 weeks, which is excellent. And so let's keep up this trend. This is, for some reason, I don't know why, but this year has been even better success than last year. We had several people each meeting to pass, but this one has been even more. So that makes me absolutely thrilled. All right, India and Ann Arbor, great. Northern Ireland, all over the world. Long Island, wow. Philippines, excellent. This is wonderful. Thank you for tuning in. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started in our conversation. But first, I always like to open up with some congratulations to each one of you who have passed. And looks like I misspelled your name. I apologize about that, Rotario. So it looks like we have 5 people that have passed the test. Richard, big shout out there for the business practitioner. As I always say, that is one of the most difficult Magento tests that is available, and you nailed it. And I can't remember your score, but I think it was pretty good. So yeah, that's a huge accomplishment. The professional tests, those are excellent as well as the front end. So this is wonderful. So and just to reiterate, if you have not yet taken a Magento test and you are a developer, start with professional. It's just as simple as that. Start with professional. You got to start there, simply because you get your feet wet. There's a much higher probability of you passing that test. And then you already have a certification on your belt. And when you go for the expert developer test, you will then have 2 certifications on your belt. You'll know what it's like to take a Magento test, and you're much more likely to pass the expert, at least from what I've seen. So very, very good. All right, and just again to repeat what I said earlier for those of you who are joining in, I configured this YouTube live stream. Well, I did not change the stream latency setting on this. So I am speaking, I don't know, it might be 30 seconds, 15 to 30 seconds sooner than when you see me. So my response to your questions will be a little delayed. All right, let's keep moving here. Okay, one thing I just want to always call out, if you haven't already, always grateful for a subscribe on YouTube. That way you also will see when I'm going live and you won't miss any of these meetings, as well as the Slack community. If you don't have a link for that, I had actually said someone last night just emailed me for that. Feel free to join in. It's a really vibrant community. We're pushing 800 members of people who are focusing on getting certifications. And in fact, I am working on some changes here and some changes to the entire SwiftOtter brand. And I'm really excited. I'll be able to share a little bit more with you in the weeks to come. But this community is going to be way more than just certifications. There will still be a huge emphasis on certifications, but the value you will get by being part of the Slack community is going to significantly or exponentially increase here in the coming months. So don't forget to join on the Slack community. All right, so one of the big things we've talked about over the last few weeks is don't check your email, i.e. eliminate distractions. I don't know about you, but this little bugger right here, it's called a phone. It's kind of a cool thing to have, and it really simplifies my life, but it can be a huge distraction. In fact, it can probably, in a lot of cases, be a bigger curse than it actually is a blessing. When I need to focus and I keep having these notifications coming in, what'd they do? What'd they text me about? That sort of thing. That is not a way to study. So again, keep this in mind. Don't check your email, turn off your notifications. One thing I've actually found is really helpful. You take your phone and just lay it upside down on like a piece of paper, or on like a stack of paper, so it kind of mutes the vibration sound of when you get a notification, and make sure you have your notification sound turned off. But you just put it over there and you don't see the screen flash up. That helps me when I'm really especially trying to concentrate. So when we're studying, we want to concentrate. So I know it sounds profound, but it's really important to keep up with that. All right, so let's jump into talking about scoping. And again, as I was saying earlier, this is a challenging topic. This is a subject that many of us haven't had to deal with at a deep level. And I think that's why it becomes tricky, because as with some other things, we don't like to dive into or focus on what we don't understand. I think it's pretty simple to say that. And a great example is I remember when Magento 2 came out, and over the next couple of years, people were kind of getting used to it. And there was a lot of not necessarily nice things that were said about the platform. And I get it. There's a lot of not nice things about the platform. I totally get it. But on the other hand, I found that the deeper one got into it, the more one could at least cope with it. And in some ways, you could actually start seeing, this actually does sort of make sense. I get the author's idea here, even though I don't agree with it, but I do get their idea, and I can work with this. I can live with it. And so that was kind of a thing. But what I found a big fallout of this new stuff is that people didn't get in and study it. And And that's what started leading to really low marks on certain sections of the test. People were familiar with certain areas and they get high marks on that. They are unfamiliar with other areas, and in my experience, it seems like people don't want to then get in and study it, and thus they get low marks on those areas. Stores are one of those areas. And again, I think primarily because we don't use this as often, at least if we're, like I mentioned, in the United States, to an extent India, and to a lesser extent South America, Europe. You all have usually a lot more experience in this topic. But there's hopefully still some things that I want to delve into here. All right, so let's talk about the four, and I'm gonna cover up some of these slides here just for a little bit, but these four different areas of store configuration. And again, these are covered on every single test, maybe a little bit less on the front end in JavaScript, but pretty much all the developer exams and the certainly the business practitioner as well. And you'd be surprised, actually, I do want to call this out. On the professional developer test, it's covered more than you think. This is a very, very important subject. So we have basically four levels of store configuration. Global is, call it the root. It's the default. And every one of these levels can override the lower level or levels. So for example, so it kind of cascades down. So global, if a value is set there, it can be overridden in website, store, and store view. If a value is set in website, it can be overridden in store and store view. Now, the kicker is that not every one of these scopes is available in all contexts. And that's where it can get really tricky and confusing. So we're going to talk through what is available where, how this all works out. But the basic idea is actually, you can liken it somewhat to CSS if you're familiar with writing cascading style sheets. And that is that you write a value and then it can be overridden. So global, this is when you go into store configuration, what you see there is in the global scope. If you go into, I didn't have that open. This upper left corner here, when it loads up here, this upper left corner will be the place that you can select which store view scope you are going to choose. And by default, it opens up into website right here. You will see this switcher in a number of different areas, products being one of them. So store view, we can switch that out, whether we want a website, store, or store view. And you'll notice again, you'll actually notice right here, not again, that is main website store. This is the store that is grayed out. Store configuration, as we see right here in this option, store configuration is not available at the store in the store scope. All right, so global, website, store, and store view. And I don't remember there being questions on the test about trying to memorize, okay, what are the four scopes that are available? There used to be questions on the test that were like that. And I guess that was helpful, but Magento tests work very hard at avoiding anything that is related to memorization. Now, there might be a few questions that are memorization related. You read in the dev docs, you can memorize a list of items, and then you'll be tested on that. But the questions are very practical, and I'm going to give you some examples of questions at the end of this conversation, so that you can get a picture as far as what it's looking for. So, but the questions would be something like, somewhat memorization. Like if we're going to kind of take a middle level here, we could say what levels are available for configuring, what store scope levels are available for for configuring pricing. And that's fairly practical, but we could even take it a step further and build a scenario around that. And I will show you questions, some practice test questions at the end that illustrate this. So, okay, very good. Let's jump into. Oh yes, one thing I do like to call out is it can be quite confusing in the admin panel. We have website, store, and store view, and that's the terminology I usually use. But in the code, we have website, store group, and store. So those are, it's kind of confusing, the different terminology, especially that it's kind of like the professional developer associate being renamed into professional, professional being renamed into expert, we kind of have some overlap here, and that's where it becomes a little bit difficult to understand. All right, so let's go through some different scenarios and look at where these configuration values are set, and we're gonna get fairly deep here as far as how this works. Product inventory by default is set for the global store view. However, that changes with multi-source inventory, or MSI. With MSI now, we can configure product inventory per website. And I don't know if I have this yet. I do, actually. Okay, good. So let's come into, this will be stocks. And we're not going to get into MSI here in this conversation, but I think, looks like I have some session issues going on here. But I think, well, let's see here. For the business practitioner, you will want to know about MSI. It's barely covered on any of the other tests. But basically, MSI, the way it works, we have a source, which is like a fulfillment warehouse, and then we have a website, right? So we have a fulfillment warehouse storing these products, and then we have our website. So we need a way to map those two together, and that happens with stocks. Stocks associate a source with a website. And if you look here, we have a default stock. I didn't need that. We have a default stock, which associates a sales channel, the website. And they call it sales channel just because you could be selling on Amazon or any other place. You have a sales channel, and you associate that with a source. So if MSI, we are able to now configure which sources, i.e. inventory available, is applicable to a given website. So it's very powerful in the configuration that you can use. You can select multiple sources and have them all applicable to one website, or you can map 1-to-1 or 2-to-1. However you want to configure it, that is available in MSI. So ultimately, product inventory is available at global, but it also can be configured at the website level. I actually need to update my slide as I'm looking at this. All right, so product inventory, that's pretty simple. And in what I've found it helpful, come back to this chart. I'm not aware of this chart being anywhere else. And in fact, in the business practitioner course that I wrote, I have a much bigger chart. But this chart is really helpful, and I suggest build it out and expand it, because this is something you can memorize, and then you can apply this back to the questions as you are working to answer them in the test. So that does make it a little bit easier. Price. Price is by default set to global. However, we can affect that. We can change that if we come into store configuration, catalog. Should make sure my caches are on, because it's acting like they are not on. Okay, then come down, catalog, and now come into price, catalog, price, scope. We see global or website. So this is changeable for a given, to a given scope, which is kind of interesting. Again, if you are, well, let me talk about that for just one extra minute. The note that we read here, this defines base currency scope, currency setup, currency options, base currency. So every product's price is actually specified in the base currency. You've probably looked in, well, for sure in the Magento admin, like looking at an order, or you've looked at the the sales order table. Actually, I think it's also in the quote table as well. If you're a developer and you see two columns, one for base grand total and another for grand total. And if you're like me, you've thought, what is the difference between base grand total and grand total? Well, this is the difference. And this is really important for you to know. And that's where, again, we are preparing for certifications. This is not just general Magento education. This is specifically geared to helping you pass the test. The base underscore whatever is literally the value that is uploaded, the price that was uploaded for the product. the product's price can then be converted into a different currency. US dollar, or if it's uploaded in US dollars, it can then be translated to euros or pesos or rupees or whatever. That translation occurs. So what the original value for a given website, that is the base currency, and then it is converted into the currency. So basically, base grand total is associated with the currency for the website, and then that is converted into the displayed currency, i.e. grand total, that you then see in the database as well. So base grand total is the unified value versus the normal currency, or I should call it the displayed currency. Here is why this is the case. Let's say you're building out a report. Well, actually, let me back up. Let's say you sell products in the United States and in India. In the United States, you have dollars. India, you have rupees. Well, the currency conversion factor, and this has got me into trouble before. The currency conversion factor, say, I think $1 is, roughly speaking, very roughly speaking, I think it's roughly 1,000 rupees, somewhere in there. So if we're selling products and we're building a report, and we have, say, one product that was sold in the United States and that same product was sold in India, one row, then the next row, then we would literally have a grand total of, let's say, the maybe it's 100 rupees, whatever. There's several zeros of difference between US dollar and Indian rupees. We would have, say, if it was $1 and the currency conversion rate was 1,000, we would have the total of those two orders being 1,001, which we know is completely incorrect. We're mixing different currencies. So what we would do is we would want to look at the base grand total value, which ultimately for those two orders would be 2, right? So we have $1 for the first one because that is our base currency, and we'd have 1 for the second one, which would be our base currency, even though it was sold to the customer in rupees, which would be 1,000 rupees, or is it 100, whatever it is, whatever the conversion rate is. So yes, and Simon has it nailed. Base grand total is for the. And I'm getting my words confused because it is a little confusing. Base grand total is listed or saved. That's the word I was looking for. Is saved in the base currency for the scope. So that could be global or it could be website. Whatever is selected here, that is the currency for that given scope, the base currency. And then we have displayed currency, and that is the grand total. That is the display value exactly. So I'm going to somewhat agree with your assessment there. It could be website or it could be global, whatever you want. Yes, table quote has base rates as well. Yes, so pretty much anywhere that's listing currency values in Magento is going to have a base equivalent of a base and a normal. I wish maybe they should have called it base grand total and displayed grand total. I think that would have cleaned up a lot of confusion there. All right, so when we do select catalog price scope, and I'm going to save this as website, we can come up into currency setup, currency options, base currency, and we will load this up. Come into currency options, and we see our base currency of US dollar and that is applicable to the website scope. We can change this to be whatever we want. Now, we need to make sure that we upload our products in that base currency, or if we're, for example, doing an import. And technically, if we are setting this at the website level, we could have a different base currency for every website. We could have a website for the United States, we could have a website for Europe, and we could have a website for India. Now, where this becomes a problem is when we cross, and hear me out, listen very, very carefully, okay? So listen carefully. This can become a problem if we if we cross our base currencies, base and displayed currency. For example, if we set the base currency to be US dollar, we set the default display currency to be euro, and we upload our product prices in euros, we will get a double conversion. I say a double conversion in quotes. It will still be converted one time, and I've seen this happen, my friend. So this is a real scenario. the product prices will be converted one time, but, and this is the important part, but they would have already been converted by your accountant or whoever when you uploaded the product prices. So it's very, very important to ensure that when you do product price imports, you match the base currency. That is the value in which they are uploaded. There's no error checking. There's no way that Magento can prevent against said problems. All right, let's review a couple of comments here. Michael said base grand total is used when the sale is settled with the payment processor. That is correct. Technically, you could do whatever you wanted, but yes, that is correct. The base grand total is used by default when the sale is settled with the payment processor. Yes. Serhi, yes, absolutely. Mentioned that this was one of the toughest topics to understand, and I'm trying to dissect it. It's difficult, but I'm hopeful to be able to dissect this as much as possible for you all, because again, my goal is to see you pass the test. Yes, and I totally agree with you, Simon. So the base values are used a configured base currency for website or global. Yes, and so this could potentially be another problem. For example, if you are building out reports, you have a website for United States, you have a website for India. Again, using our great divide of currency values. And so if you were just to do a indiscriminate report of all of your base grand totals in your database and did not separate it out or group by, well, that would be separated out by website ID, you could be running into the same problem as well. Simply because, again, United States, $1 versus Indian rupees. I can't remember. I need to get this straight. I think it's closer to 1,000 Indian rupees, somewhere in there. So either way, that is where that big difference can be, and it just takes being careful. All right. So hopefully I have made this at least somewhat clear to you. You can configure the product base currency or the product price to be global or website. This is the value. This price is then converted into the displayed currency that is shown on the front end through the entire checkout. And remember, when a customer is coming to our website to purchase something and they are they see a different currency, they see that all the way through the checkout. I'm not aware of a single place that they actually end up seeing that they're purchasing in US dollars when they see euros all over the place. Okay, thank you. $1 US dollar is 72 Indian rupees. Thank you. I thought I had that conversion off a little bit. So rounding it out to be 1 to 100 thereabouts. That is great. Thank you. Okay, so yes, this is so product price scope is website or global. Very important to remember. I have lots of people helping me out. This is wonderful. Thank you. This is great. Okay, so let's move into product attributes. And really, this comes down to product management. In our default store here, let's come and edit a product and see what options we have. As you saw here, most product attributes are selected for global, website, or store view. Now that isn't always the case, and it's important to remember at least a few of the attributes in which it is not the case. Well, that is opening up. Oops, there we go. It is already opening. You know what? I have an idea as far as what's going on. I think I left my debugger on. Give me 1 second. I will turn that off, and I think that will make life a little faster. Oops. Okay, doke. All right. So, yes. So if we look down here, there is a magic little button, not a button, a label underneath every attribute, and that is tells you the minimum with the most granular store scope that this attribute can be changed in. And I think we can boil this down into all of, actually, and I forgot to mention this earlier, I think we can boil all store view scopes down into a couple of rules. Let me actually go back here. Because I forgot to call these rules out. I put them here, but I forgot to call them out. Global is pretty much all settings. But website, we have our feature switches. Do we want to enable B2B or disable it? Do we want to turn on this specific payment method or disable it? If we are enabling or disabling specific functionality, feature switches will be likely found at the website level. Occasionally, it'll be found lower than that, like in store view level, but pretty much it's always found at the website level. Pricing, again, is global or website. Most configuration is available at the website level. Store. This is configured for the root category and the store switcher, which, again, if there was one scope we could eliminate, it'd probably be store. The reason I find it interesting, just because if you are talking about changing a configuration value, it's a rule to remember is it's always going to be at the website or store view level. Period. It will always be at the website or store view level. The main website or the store level though is where we can. Oh man, see how much faster that is. I turned off the debugger and just pops right up. All right, so So anyways, we have our we can select our root category at the store level. The root category allows us to be able to control which category structure we want to display. The category structure that we want to display. So if we have a customer that comes to us and says, hey, I want to have on the front end 2 different product catalogs. Both are, I want one to be browsable on one domain name, one to be browsable on the second domain name. How do I do this? Well, you could say, well, set up 2 different websites and, assign products to each. Or you could say, just use set up 2 stores and a store view for each and create a root category for each and configure the products that way. The benefit of this way, and this could be a negative, the benefit of this way is that those products will still be available on one website or another. So ultimately, with a little bit of coding, you can make it so that they can have like a unified checkout. Products that they add to cart on one website can be added to the cart on the other websites. It's a unified checkout. And that would be a benefit of a root category, but also could be a negative. If they want to completely separate out these 2 domain names, they want to have no interaction whatsoever between the 2, well, then we might then have to go to a website because that allows us to enable or disable a product at the website level. Yes, one thing I wanted to call out here is the visibility. Okay, so there are a number of ways to do this, and this is where it's really, really important to take time to dive in and fully understand these store scopes. I have, 50 minutes or so today, so I can't necessarily dive in as deeply as I would like to, but there's often multiple ways to accomplish the same thing, but each one of them has its own trade-offs. So, for example, I just mentioned assigning or enabling or disabling a product at the website level. Right. Well, we can do that here with enable product. We can enable or disable for a website level. I can jump down into a scope here, and we'll talk about this scope selector here in a minute. I can jump down there, change the enable product there. I can also come down to product in websites. I can check and uncheck the product's availability in a given website. That is another way to do it. And ultimately, the third way that I'm aware of as a way to do this, if you're not using Magento Commerce, and we're not talking about Magento Commerce today, would be with using visibility. Because we notice that visibility is available in a store view. So ultimately, if they were okay with doing a little bit extra configuration, you could use the store. You could create a store with a unique root category and then change the visibility at the store view level. A very important concept to remember as you're taking these tests is Magento's goal is to reduce the number of scopes to the minimum viable number. You have limitations, you have trade-offs that you have to work with, and that's legitimate. But if you can reduce these scopes, it reduces long-term administration overhead, which makes the store more maintainable, which makes people like Magento more. So that is a really critical thing to understand. Just because going to the website level, creating a new website store and store view might fulfill the need, that would be the incorrect answer if creating a store and store view would fulfill the need. And that is very important to remember. So, yeah, just keep that in mind as you're working through this. The website store and store view, it's about minimizing this. But in order to minimize it, the easy answer is to go let's create a new website store and store view. That's easy. But we need to minimize it. The more we minimize it, the easier it makes it to manage long term. And the reason I say that is, let's say you create a new website, and maybe you override a value for one website. You have 5 websites, and one of the stores we manage, I think they have like 8 websites, which honestly was not necessarily a great design, how it was originally designed, but that's beside the point. So if a value is changed for a given website, for example, a payment method, is tweaked at a given website, maybe that's necessary, maybe that's not. I don't know. But if it's tweaked at one website but not at the others, troubleshooting it just becomes more difficult. If you are looking to switch payment method providers and you're on Braintree and you want to go to Stripe, well, you have to go through all 8 websites and configure that versus just configuring that in one. Again, depending on if you have it overridden. If you don't have it overridden, it's not that much extra overhead. But if you do have stuff overridden, that's where you start getting into problems. Yes. Okay. So I think, again, if you have any questions, drop that in the comments. Hopefully this is making sense as I'm jumping through this. I always wish I had more time to be able to dive in even more. All right, let's talk about the store view selector for products. This is confusing because if you look here, we see there is a website selected here, and there is a store view selected here as far as the scope for each one of these attributes. The reason it is confusing is when this says website, it means website. So, but there's no place to edit the website scope for a given product. You see, the way it works is we have to jump past the website. We have to jump past the website scope in order to be able to edit it. We jump deeper into the store view scope, and then we can edit the website scope. So the fallout is, let's say we have 2 store views. We have store view 1, store view 2. I don't have a store view 2 here, but we have those 2 store views. I click into default store view, and I change this website enable product. Let's just say I change it. I save it, and I come into the other default store view. Let's say I click into there, and I will see the exact same thing. Now, I have to remember that this is configured for the store view. This is configured for the website level, and as such, all store views that inherit that website will show the same value. So if I change the price for a given website, that price will change in all the store view scopes underneath that website. Another big gotcha is, and I see this very regularly with imports and with like APIs that are pushing product information into Magento, is where the store view overrides the value specified in the global. And again, this sounds incredibly profound, right? Store views can override the value set in global. Absolutely. But if you only have one website, store and store view, and you're editing these products in the global scope, and the value is not changing, well, that could be because some API or some CSV import overrode the value at the store view level. You come down here and you see, there was this use default value is unchecked, and there is a different value there. That would explain the problem. Simon asked a question about, does the expert exam have questions about RabbitMQ and batch processing? No, not to the extent of my knowledge. All right. Oh, yes. And store views are basically for translatable values. Come back here. There we go. So if we see a store view value here, product name, that's pretty much going to be something that you would change the language for, whether it's changing it to Hindi or Spanish or Portuguese, whatever. That would be set in the those are pretty much store view values across the entire Magento website. Translatable values and currency, display currency is in the store view scope. Okay. Yeah, I suggest looking at time here. Yeah, I suggest reviewing the rest of it. You can come back here to YouTube and you can review the rest of what we're. Oops. Thank you. There we go. You can go through and review the rest of these scopes. I think I've covered the most important ones, payment methods and shipping methods. I want to get on to a couple other things. Yep. So I think that we covered pretty much all that. I just have a habit of diving in and actually getting to the Magento panel as opposed to looking at my slides. So yeah, feel free to review this stuff. All right. So let's talk through a couple of scenarios. And these are the scenarios that, I think we're good there. I'm gonna hide there just for a couple minutes so you can see the full extent of the scenarios. These scenarios are what can, frankly, kill people. I put that in quotes on these tests. Make them have low marks. They are built out. They might be even a paragraph of text, and we'll look at some scenarios. But again, they are all focused on, I think, pretty much all of those, at least the most dreaded and feared ones on the business practitioner test. And there are some to a lesser extent on professional and some of the others. But these are all talking about the minimum number of scopes to create. That word minimum is incredibly important to remember. It's minimum. What is the fewest we can do? Which means we need to have a much better knowledge. We can't just throw the kitchen sink at it, say, yep, just create a new website. It wants us to know what are the ramifications of creating a new website, what are the ramifications of store or store view. All right, so configure multiple websites with a base currency for each. How does this affect product prices? I think we had a good conversation about this and a couple of pitfalls that you can run into with modifying these for creating this and modifying their prices. So let's take a look at the next one. Optimize product attributes for multiple languages. All right, so if you need to create a new product attribute, let's see. I don't think I opened that up yet. Let's stores, product. Man, that debugger off makes a huge difference. Okay, we have several here. Let's just create a new attribute. Blindly creating attributes, and I've been guilty of this, at the default scope that is selected at store view is not a good idea. In fact, in the course of my career as working with the Magento, I have basically switched my default to be global. We're using a more intelligent approach, but my default is global. When we approach a product here, we are creating an attribute. Many times, it's going to be global, especially if it's a yes/no. We do not need anything else. Well, actually, let me put it this way. If we are setting a text field, as far as the input type, there is a good chance we need it to be store view, but again, not 100% chance. If our value is almost anything other, well, text one of these top three. Any one of these top three is probably, there's a good chance it'll be store view. Anything else is almost guaranteed going to be global. Maybe website, but for sure global. So, and I'm talking about like feature switches. Enable this mode for displaying a product. Use the visualizer on this product, yes or no? Well, that would be definitely global. Or maybe possibly website. If you don't want to have like a certain feature available on a given website, then you might do a website, but otherwise it's pretty much going to be global. So we want to optimize this as much as possible. Again, we don't need store view for every single one of our scopes. And one of the reasons is when we do have store view, it provides another opportunity to override, and an opportunity to override means a potential another support ticket down the road because somebody missed that override was present there. So the more we can limit it back, the more dummy-proof we make our Magento installations, which makes our end users happier. All right, so then optimization of this would be, well, again, selecting the right store view and the right input type for this. That would be the biggest source of optimization for these attributes for different store views or languages in this case. Oh, yes, one other thing I forgot to mention is the dropdown, the high and mighty dropdown. This is critical. When you create a dropdown menu, 9 times out of 10, and I might be exaggerating just a little bit there, it might be more like 7 times out of 10, you want the scope to be global. Well, Joseph, why would we want the scope to be global if we need to translate this, right? I mean, wouldn't we put in, we would say like this would be our value for water and the Spanish agua and whatever, I don't know, we can all the other languages, we would just add whatever French for water is here and for water and Hindi for water, right? I mean, isn't that how we would do this? No, definitely not. What we would do, and again, this is all on this is stuff that's covered on the test, okay? So this is really important. If we were doing that, we would have our scope be set to store view. But no, our scope should not be set to store view. The more store views we have, the farther to the right this list goes. So we have only one store view here, but if we had one for Spanish and one for French, that would all come over here. So instead, we have our scope as global, and we would say, let's say instead of default store view, it's Spanish. We would put agua in there. We would, if there was one for Hindi, we would put the value there, and it would keep going to the right for every translation. This is a huge way to save effort in the system. So basically, your administrator is just going to select water, and on the front end, it will show the applicable value for the given store view. That's pretty nice. All right. Yes. Shift to applicable countries to unify store views and countries. Yes. So if we want to, this is a difficult topic, but if we want to allow for a store view to select which countries they want to be shipped to, the store view, if we created one store view, this is only applicable when a store view is geographical, related to a geographical region, for example, a country. So we would have the store view, and then we can set the ship to applicable countries in this shipment configuration. We would set that to the list of countries that are applicable for that store view or those store views, and then we're essentially kind of linking those together. So ship to applicable countries is very important to remember. All right, a couple last things before we wind it up for today. Yes, how to get the store view, store configuration value in a given context. We use the store scope interface, or scope config interface, excuse me. Config interface. And one little trick that I like to do, I really don't like the word interface in some writing code. It clutters it up. It's just boilerplate. I can do replace with alias, scope, config, boom, done. And it's much simpler, or we could even, we can change it out to be store config. That's even better. That's really clear. That is really clear what that does. So either way, we can do this scope config. I didn't change that. We have two values here. Two methods, get value or is set flag. Is set flag returns a Boolean. Get value returns the value from the database. So is set flag is wonderful for basically assigning a true or false, getting a true or false value from the database, from store configuration. We have get value. We put in our value that we find is matched in store configuration. I'm not going to do that, but what I want to focus on is scope type and scope code. These are two very important aspects of fetching values from the database or from store configuration. So we have a hint here, scope config interface. We have scope type default, which is not very helpful. So what we can do is, let's jump down into here. Well, we can say scope is store. We can hard code that in. I cannot remember off the top of my head. There is, maybe is it in the store model? Well, I probably should figure that out here real quick. Store model, store. Nope, it's not there. Oh, man, I should have tracked this down before our conversation. Yep. If one of you wants to find that and drop it in the comments, that would be great. Store resolver. No, boy, I will see if I can. Today or Monday, I will try to remember to pull that class path up. Basically, there is a class that has these as defined as constants, which again saves you from having to do that. But for the sake of time here, we're just going to do it stores. So we set what scope. Actually, we'll just say website. What scope we want to fetch this at, and then we have the scope code or scope ID that we want to pass in. So this is especially important when you are looking things up from the admin, getting scope configuration in the admin, especially as it relates, for example, to something that has been completed in a given scope. For example, you're working with an order and you need to see if a value should be yes or no for this given order, and you look it up. You look it up based off of the store ID that is associated with the order and load it in that way. Scope config model. Okay, maybe it is that. We could find that out quickly in this way. Nope, unfortunately, it's not. It was a good try. We see the scopes here. For some reason, they're not using the constants there. But there is some constants that are available, and I cannot remember off the top of my head where those are. All right, so that is how to get values, and I suggest that you do this. Build out a system.xml. Oh, there we go. Gareth, thank you. Scope interface. That is it. I knew it was similar to the other. Scope interface. Yes. Well, it's the scope default. Boy. Store model scope interface. I missed that. Looks like there's two scope interfaces. Okay. There we go. There you go. You got it right there. You want to use these constants. Do not hard code these values, and that's just not right. It is a code smell to hard code those values into your code. You always want to use, well, I deleted this out. We'll do scope interface right there, and we would do scope store and store ID 1 or whatever it is. All right. Great. Yep, you nailed it. Thank you. All right, how do you emulate a given scope? I would love to take some time to dive into this, but I suggest that you do it, and maybe depending on our time, we might do this in a future class. I had it pulled up, but I might have erased it with my other hunts that I was doing. Let's come look at the forgot your password email. Emails are sent in a given store scope, and because ultimately they can be initiated from the back end. You can look up the send order email. That also has this. Actually, you know what? That is a much better example than what I was thinking here. So let's come into sales, controller, admin HTML, order. Great. Actually, I'm not seeing that off the top of my head either. We're an admin HTML order. Email. I thought I was looking for send. There we go. Order management notify. We get pass the order in there. This order service. Notifier notify. This sender send. Keep diving in a little bit. Let's see here. This would probably be order email sender. Send order email. Send. All right. This check and send. Identity container set store, prepare template, etc. So, yeah, there is this store emulation that is happening here. So it's important to understand how that works. Oops. Okay, let's jump into merchant. Two practice test questions. So we'll run through this here quickly. A merchant operates one Magento installation that ships to residents in both the United States and Europe. Wish to reduce conversion fees, they wish to charge payment cards in the payer's currency. What two steps must be taken to accomplish this? All right. So I would be curious to hear your answers to this question. Drop them in the comments there box, and I will give you just a minute to think about this. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to pop those up now. I'm going to have to be heading out here in just a little bit, but I will do my very best to answer any questions you have. So I would love to hear your answer to this question. And I think it should be answerable based off of what we talked about today. So if you're paying attention, which I hope you were, you should be able to formulate an answer to this question. I will give it just another little bit so you can see it. All right, and then I'm going to jump to the next question, and then we'll come back. The next question, you are helping a client troubleshoot a problem with editing products. They switched to a products store view scope and changed an attribute. When they switch to another store view attribute, that attribute's value also changed. Wow, that's kind of a big problem there, huh? However, when they switch to the global scope, the attribute value has not changed. All right, what's the problem? Ooh, that's a big challenge, right? All right, so let's give you just a minute. Feel free to answer this question here, and let's see what your response is. I will wait just for a moment, and then we will go back and we will review your answers for the first one. Okay, let's go back. All right, what 2 steps must be taken to accomplish this? All right, we want to charge payment cards. So if we remember, we talked about this means a different website. The website is the base currency in which cards are charged. So what 2 steps must be taken to accomplish this? We have a Magento installation, i.e. one website store and store view. So that means we need to create a new website store and store view. We need to set the applicable base currency for that. So that would be answers B and C. I put these in here, this one and this one, because if we just wanted to show a new payment or a new currency, that would be done with A and D. But in order for this, we need to create a new website store and store view and set the applicable base currency. So for those of you that answered that, congratulations and good job. Let's go back to question number 2. What is the problem? Well, does the product need to be assigned to the website? Nope. Cache needs to be cleared? Probably not. We're talking about editing a product, and so editing a product is not going to be affected by the cache. There is a third-party customization. Website is created, attributes created in the website scope, or the attribute is created in the website scope. And just like we talked about, you kind of jump past that website scope in order to edit it, and then you come back and you edit in the website. It's basically you look like you're editing in the store view scope, but you're really editing the website scope. So the answer to this question is C. So for those of you that answered that correctly, congratulations, good job. For those of you that didn't, I just want to underscore the importance of this subject for you, simply because this is difficult. This is really difficult stuff. But the nice thing is it's not unknowably difficult. It's difficult. So if there's any final questions before we wrap up, I'd be happy to answer those. I'll just give you a minute. Otherwise, we are approaching our deadline here for today. And yeah, it is wonderful to hang out with you and to be able to spend this hour of time with you, my friends. And as we're all working towards the same goal, I kind of tapped out my certifications last year. So I don't really have anything else other than order management. I'm not interested in order management that I can really go for. But my goal is to encourage you and just to help you to succeed in your endeavor. So do not forget to go subscribe to the YouTube channel here. And also don't forget to, if you're not part of the Slack community, send me an email. I will be happy to get you in there. Or you can just go and onto swiftauto.com/certifications, and you will see links there for joining the certification challenge. So anyways, looks like I don't see any other questions coming in, so that is great. You always have my ear on the Slack channel. I'm happy to try to jump in pretty regularly there and see if there's any questions that people have. So yeah, if you have questions, feel free to pop me up there. This has been great as always, and I look forward to next week. So remember, for the meetup, certification meetups. That's always every other week. So this week and 2 weeks from now. But we're doing kind of a developer study group, and that will be next Saturday. So next Saturday, we will be diving into more developer-related stuff, and that went over really well. People seem to love that, and it was really cool to be able to hang out and talk very specific developer stuff. So, anyways, take care. Have a good weekend, and I will look forward to seeing at least some of you next week, or maybe hopefully the rest of you in 2 weeks from now. Take care.